And welcome to the DigiGods podcast for the last week of January 2016. I am happy to welcome a strapping young guest here. It's my co-host, young man. What's your name?
My name is Yoenis Cespedes.
Yes.
Who is Yoenis Cespedes, you ask?
I have no idea.
You have no idea that
No.
it is. He is the Mets outfielder that the Mets had 0% chance of signing in the offseason. People assumed that he would just go off and sign a $100 million contract for 6 years with another team, but it turns out the Mets pulled it out. 3 years, $75 million with an opt-out after 1 year. We get Yoenis Cespedes back, which means that pretty much, except for Daniel Murphy, we have basically the entire same team who went to the World Series last year.
Well, there you go.
I'm very excited.
Good.
Very crafty. You know, Mets management is cheap and stupid, but here they broke open the wall and they were crafty.
It's nice to have you back. Tim did a very good job sitting in for you.
Yeah, Tim Coxell, everyone.
Yes,
loved him.
And we all So first of all, where have you been? Tell us about this crazy adventure of yours, this working 7 days a week, 890 hours, whatever you've been doing.
I work at a cable network.
Yeah.
And I've had to work Sundays. I've had to work 6 days a week for the last 2.5 months.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Not cool.
No. You know what they say? No one ever went to their grave wishing they'd worked more. And you realize that after you work 6 days a week for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So this is actually the first Sunday. We're recording this on a Sunday.
Yeah.
This is the first Sunday where I have not had to work in 2.5 months.
Well, nice to have you back.
Thank you very much.
A
lot of controversy since I've been gone.
Yeah, well, first of all, Tim and I talked a little bit about our Lafka dinner, which went very nicely. Very happy with it.
You know, the Lafka dinner was about 3 hours.
Oh, it was less. It was just under.
So
I mean, the dinner itself, yes,
like the whole evening was like 3 to 4 hours. Which my point being, is that it seems like a long time. But you realize that there really is no conceivable way to make that dinner any shorter.
If that dinner people were thrilled with how short it was. I mean, people were commenting as well to Stephen and to Justin and they loved it. Like, wow, we heard this could be a real slog, because they'd heard from people the previous years. They're like, oh man, it goes on forever, which it did once upon a time when before they really cracked the whip. Because what's interesting is at a certain there didn't used to be, for those who don't know the structure of the dinner, it's like you go around 5 o'clock. You hang out and do little cocktails in the entry. There's like a little cocktail area.
Should I tell everyone my key to getting a free drink at the dinner?
No, don't do that because the word will get back and then it'll be it's your secret. You just keep that secret. But it's there's a little cocktail area. You mingle, you mix, you do the thing. There's a couple of bars at each end, and then they open the doors at 6 o'clock. Everybody goes in. You eat for about 30, 40 minutes or whatever, and then the first award goes off. And usually you're done. I mean, it used to go. We got out of there at 11:30 in some years.
Really,
it was insane.
I think it was boring as shit. I'm sorry, it just was.
Members of the group will go up and do a little intro. And then they give the award to the person they're presenting to, the actor, the actress, whoever, which are all known ahead of time because we announced them in December. But it didn't used to be that there was a limit to how long you could talk.
No. There was a limit, but nobody paid attention to it.
Well, then they limited it to 3, and half the people paid attention. Now it's like 90 seconds. And I got, I had special permission to go longer because I was presenting to the Career Achievement Award winners. So, Ann Coates' career.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. So,
yes.
I was told you can go a little longer. Plus, I was introducing, someone else to do a thing. Anyway, there's a whole thing that goes on. So anyway, but we got done before 10. It was great.
It was great. You know what? The only thing that it missed, which of course it would have made the evening longer, is I still look back to that golden year where we had a musical performance from Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
The year we gave him Best Actor for Crazy Heart.
Yeah.
Now, that was cool. To be in a small, intimate banquet hall and Jeff Bridges and T-Bone Burnett are singing. That's great.
That's pretty great.
But then what happens is the next year Robert Davi shows up and sings some Frank Sinatra song. And we're like, what the F is he doing here? And that just put a whole sour on the whole musical performance thing. So now we just blow through the awards. You know
what else? And you know how I feel about this. But you know what else made it fast? Was the fact that we did not give out the Douglas Edwards Experimental Award.
That's true.
Because that usually thing
what?
just
That's
drags the evening down, because you usually give that to someone who has never had their moment in the limelight. They're usually, sitting in a basement somewhere editing, something that will never see the light of day, and it's just a hobby and a project, and suddenly someone gives them an award, and here they are sitting in an auditorium with, movie stars and agents and producers, and they go up there and they don't want to leave. And it'll go on for like 15 minutes. I financed this with the inheritances I got from my aunt and my mom's leftover dowry, and then I sold some silverware and begged on the street for a few weeks, and I got a little bit of unemployment and disability, and eventually...
Why are we talking about this? And,
I don't know.
Did you talk about all this with Tim?
Huh?
Did you talk about all this with Tim?
Yeah, a little bit. But, it was nice of you to take a picture of me blurry going for George Miller's hand with the big shake there. That was good.
I saw it happening. I said, you know what? Wade's going to want a picture of this.
I'm grateful that you did that.
And you know what's funny? Here's my problem.
What a sweet man.
I know. Then we'll move on. After you were done with George, I could, as a member of the group, I had every right to come to George and say, George, my name is Mark Heisen with the group. I just want to shake your hand. You give me a lot of pleasure over the years. Love your movies. I could have done that. Every right to do, and he would have to literally listen to me, roll his eyes in his head, and listen to me for 15 seconds.
He was so cool.
But I'm just not that guy. I'm like, leave him alone.
I'm not that guy either. But you know what? I was 14 and Mad Max came out. We were like, oh, so cool. And here I am. I'm a grown man. I'm sitting in the room with the guy that made Mad Max. I am not going to miss the chance to walk up and shake his hand and say, dude, you have haunted me since I was 14.
I don't blame you. It's just not something I can do.
Yeah.
I wish I could, because it's a better story.
So the Academy, bunch of racists. Those crazy racists.
I was thinking the other day, it's like, okay, here's... and I'm going to preface my comments by saying
Tim was all over TV the last few days.
I know, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Good for him.
Yeah.
I'm going to preface my comment to saying that the Academy's not racist.
No, of course
racist. Not. The Academy, the Oscars are the symptom, not the disease. The disease is hiring. You have to hire these African American and Hispanic and Mexican American writers and directors. Can you even name a black DP?
Yes. There's one. There's one. There's one. But he did 2 films last year, 2 of the best films. He did Selma. And he also did...
because a black director had to hire him.
No, but he also... No. In fact, let's pull up his name. I should know his name off the top of my head.
Shecky?
By the way, I had a Mad Max moment coming over here. The Long Beach Assassin Riders Bike Club, like 60 of them buzzed past me.
No, you know what?
Along with their little...
No, on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, there's a coffee bean. It's on the corner of Ventura and Coldwater Canyon. Mm-hmm. On the weekends... You see all those guys, they are lined up. Their bikes are lined up. They go into that coffee bean, just 60 just mean-mothered, just leather-clad, tattooed bikers going into a coffee bean. And all they do is I'm not a motorcycle guy. I think it's so obnoxious.
Well, this was, seriously, I was
wait, was it on Ventura Boulevard?
No, it was on PCH. It was like, Toe Cutter, Johnny the Boy, Bubba. I felt I'd had a total Mad Max moment.
Anyway.
No, A Most Violent Year, same DP.
Beautiful, and you know what? That was a really well shot film.
Selma, Most Violent Year, and Ain't Them Bodies, Saints, and Pariah. Those are. I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah, that guy's.
He's amazing. He's the next Emmanuel Lubetsky. Yeah. He's phenomenal. Yeah, his name is Bradford Young.
He's also
phenomenal.
He's also one.
True. Well, see, and here's the thing. By the way, he also did Pawn Sacrifice, which is really damn good looking. No, he's doing a ton of movies. I mean, he's really, really good. But here's the thing. It's not just about black people working in the industry. It's not even just about ethnic people working in the industry. It's not just about Asians and Hispanic. It's beyond that. It's more than about women. It's even if there's one reason why, for example, there is a faith-based film movement, because those people don't get hired to make movies in the business. They don't feel like they belong in the business. You could even extend it to Chinese cinematographers. They work in China. They don't work here because they've got no sort of entryway here. You extend it to nationalities. You can go. There are all kinds of ways in which the industry is not very quote unquote diverse, and I kind of hate that word because it's become this cliche that is supposed to be a catch-all for things. Part of the problem is that the business it's cronyistic. It's clannish. It's, you get in because you know somebody or you got family members that were in the business before, or, you got connections. It's very relationship driven, and it's really hard to get in. And if you live in a certain part of the world, let's say you live in, freaking war-torn, Turkmenistan or something. To the idea to work in Hollywood, how is that even to work in the movie business at all? How is that even an avenue that you see anywhere around you? You don't.
Well, but that point is well taken, but it's sort of over here. We're talking about people think that people have this crazy notion that the reason Idris Elba was not nominated for an Oscar was because the Academy's racist.
Well,
the reason why Michael Jordan did not get it nominated because
the
literally the 4,000 the 1,500 members of the acting branch all colluded and said we don't like black people.
See, that's the thing. They look at the demographics of the Academy and say, well, it's mostly white and it's mostly male. Well, that's because the industry in most of these branches is mostly white and mostly male. If you look at the guys who edit movies, who do sound design for movies, who mix movies, who sit in post-production stages, most of them are fat white guys. And that's just how it's always been. And, it's because the same people know the same people, and it's just a job that avails itself to a certain kind of person from a certain place. No one's out actively recruiting other people and saying, you could be a sound editor. It just doesn't happen. But the other thing, because everyone focuses on the actors, and the actors are one thing and all the others are other things. Since 2000, more black Americans and people, if you're black from other countries too, have gotten nominated for Oscars in other categories than ever before in history. I mean, you had Quincy Jones was the first guy ever nominated as a producer of a Best Picture, first black producer. That was The Color Purple. That's in the 80s. There was like one more for the next 15 years, and then in the last 6 years we've had like 5. So, I mean, you've had Ang Lee has won director twice. We've had 2 consecutive Mexican Best Directors. You had Slumdog Millionaire with an all non-white cast. The Artist was the first time that a completely foreign production won Best Picture. This year, sure, all 20 acting nominees are all white, but you know what? Half of them are foreign-born. So there are all kinds of ways that you can kind of slice that pie, and ultimately the problem that everybody needs to focus on is this. If you are black or Asian or Hispanic and you're an actor, specifically an actor, you don't get cast in movies typically unless the part calls for someone of your race. If you're white, you don't face that hurdle. And that's the one that everybody seems to keep going back to. And that's a legitimate concern. And that's an economic concern. That's risk aversion. That's not driven because they hate people who aren't white. That's just because white is considered safe. And if you're not white, oh my gosh, if we put you in a movie, then the Chinese might not want to go see it. And, Europe might not want to go see you. And suddenly, it becomes you're factoring this risk assessment that's really not realistic.
No, when
it's fear-based.
Yes. 80% of scripts that circulate around town, the main character is not described based on their race.
Which Idris Elba was talking about.
John Smith, 30, tall, and fat. That's all. It doesn't say he's white. Doesn't say he's black. It says not. So you could put any white or black actor in there, but they always wind up going for the white actor.
And when I was in film school, there was a black graduate student who made a film that had an all-white cast. And he was asked the question, why didn't you cast any black actors? And he said, because I didn't specify race in the casting notice. And I thought I'd just get all the best actors of all races, which is what I was looking for. He said, but then I realized most black actors won't even answer a casting call unless it specifies black, because they've been conditioned to think that no one's going to hire them unless it's a specifically black part. And that's sad, and that's unfortunate, and that's what you have to break down. So in many respects, the Academy is just, you're right, it's a symptom. It's the tail. You can't blame the tail for the dog. You got to kind of, change the other side of it. So I think
I don't want to blame the victim, though. I mean, obviously, I don't want to blame
of course not.
Black
but don't boycott the Academy. Use this as an opportunity to raise the awareness of the discussion. But that being said, I think the new rules changes are actually good.
I like the new rules changes.
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
So, some of the older guys are complaining.
Well, yeah,
because they're 89 years old and they like to vote, but they haven't worked in 25 years, and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, well, but also look, if you look at all the branches of the Academy, there's a branch for every category or every substantial category that receives an award. There's the costumers branch, the music branch, the writers branch, and all of those. But there are also a bunch of branches, members at large, which means, you just know somebody, you got the right connections. There's executives. I mean, there's
PR people are in there now.
Publicity. Well, the president of the Academy right now, Shobun Isaacs, came from publicity.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with publicists because they actually work on movies, but executives don't. They sit in an office. I mean, they sit in an office. Executives shouldn't be members of the Academy. And honestly, agents and managers who belong to the art actors representation branch, what are they doing in there? Seriously, Ari Emanuel, why does he get to be in the Academy? What does he do? He's an agent. Get out of there. This is for artists. Agents aren't artists. Don't you make enough money? Don't you have enough influence? You have to be in the Academy too? Come on, stop it. Seriously.
All right, so the bottom line is this, that the Academy is not racist. Stop it.
Yes.
But there is a problem in the industry with hiring minority actors. It's a definite problem that's above the line and below the line.
And the Academy can only honor the movies and the performances that exist. They can't honor the ones that don't exist. And they can't honor films that don't get distributed. And part of the problem, too, the mid-budget movie started disappearing 10 years ago. And that was where people took risks. Most of the movies that Spike Lee made in his heyday were mid-budget movies. You had a lot of talent that got broken through in those movies. And those movies don't exist anymore. So now that talent really is limited to television. And that's kind of unfortunate, but changes have to get made. And, people, you can vote as an audience member. Vote with your dollars. Go see good movies. Don't see bad movies. That's kind of where it is. Anyway, let's talk about Blu-rays and DVDs and all that kind of jazz.
I like it. Let's do that.
Good deal.
Do you want any ice cream?
Yes, but that would be wonderful.
I have ice cream for you.
Get me some ice cream.
It is chocolate raspberry ice cream.
Oh my goodness! And you made this?
I did.
You're
I have not done a show for 2.5 months, and I wanted to welcome you back with something.
Well, you're a mensch.
And that's my way of saying I made the ice cream like 6 weeks ago, and I'm trying to get rid of it.
That's okay.
So I will give it to you.
I will pretend that I didn't even hear that. All right. You know what? I have saved up a lot of this Twilight Time stuff. While you're getting the ice cream, I will go through some Twilight Time stuff. You can now get Twilight Time titles. Remember, these are all limited in releases. Once they're gone, they're gone. And you can get them at TwilightTimeMovies.com or ScreenArchives.com. But you can also go to TwilightTimeMovies.com now. They have their own site. And man, what a bunch of great stuff! They just keep. You heard us do an interview over the holiday show, and. Here's one that's just going to wipe you out. Oscar winner for Best Original Score for an amazing score by John Barry. Born Free, Mark.
Born Free.
Elsa the Lion.
As free as the...
It's great. I grew up on this movie. I love this movie. Didn't love the sequels quite so much. Living Free, Forever Free.
Lame.
Free plus one. It didn't.
Free plus tax.
Free plus tax. Yeah. The sequels all kind of felt like they were just kind of trying to ride on the music. But this has the usual isolated score track, a wonderful, fantastic audio commentary with film historians John Burlingame, Julie Kirgo, and Nick Redman. Nick Redman, of course, we did our interview with. And original trailers. It looks gorgeous on Blu-ray. The fantastic photography of the African continent's wonderful. Kings Go Forth. Really interesting pickup. This is from the 20th Century Fox and the MGM library. Natalie Wood, never been more beautiful or more stunning. Frank Sinatra and Tony Curtis. Really incredibly cool movie. Directed by a guy who primarily did mostly kind of B movies at the time, Delmer Daves. He did the original 3:10 to Yuma, but did a lot of just kind of, really solid sort of schlocky B-movie stuff for the studios. He was one of their programmer guys. But this is from 1958, and Sinatra and Tony Curtis are a couple of American soldiers during World War II in France, and they fall in love with Natalie Wood, who is an expat. And then, of course, there's a little bit of a kind of a little cloak and dagger thing going on. But it's really quite a good film, and one of the best things that Delmer Daves ever did, and I think a really, really good pickup. Then we also have Mysterious Island, and Mysterious Island is a Jules Verne thing from 1961. It is technically, I guess, a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I had never necessarily known, and I've seen this thing several times in the past. But it's okay. It's sort of more about the special effects of the era than anything else, and it's a great Bernard Herrmann score. But other than that, it's kind of sort of forgettable. But you get a bunch of stuff here too. The audio commentary with Randall William Cook, C. Courtney Joyner, and Stephen C. Smith, and a few other things, including some TV spots. Also of note, The Detective, another Frank Sinatra film, which is a later Sinatra film from 1968. sort of more of a. This is kind of a gritty Frank Sinatra cop vehicle. It feels like a 1968 early 70s film, a little bit more in that French Connection-y kind of vein. Good score by Jerry Goldsmith, who was really coming on at the time. So it's a decent film, more just a straight Sinatra vehicle. 1984, which is a film I have some very, very mixed feelings about. This is the Michael Radford 1984.
I like this one.
That was actually made in 1984.
It's good.
And see, I was kind of bored seeing this. By the way, I you know who I saw this with? Now that I think back on it, I remember this entirely. I remember the entire experience of seeing this originally. Have you've seen the new Star Wars, the Star Wars movie?
That all the kids are talking about?
That all the kids are talking about?
I have.
So Brian Burke, producer of that. So Brian at the time was, what would he have been? He would have been like, I don't know, 15 or something, 14 or 15. So I went with Brian to see this. I saw 1984 with the future producer of Star Wars. Brian and I went to see this, and we sat on the balcony of what was then the Egyptian Westwood. The UA Egyptian Westwood.
I remember the Egyptian Westwood.
Remember the Egyptian Westwood with all the hokey BS that they threw in there. Anyway, so we went and saw this there, and honestly, I nearly fell asleep. I really did. This thing bored me to tears. It was beautiful. It was really nicely made. John Hurt is wonderful. Richard Burton is menacing, when he pulls his tooth out and, why are you doing this to me? I'm not doing it to you. You're doing it to yourself. Chilling. I remember that, but I still thought the Ridley Scott 1984 Apple commercial was better.
Oh, stop that.
It did. Anyway, this only has an isolated score and a trailer. It is. I don't know that a perfect version of 1984 has been done. The previous black and white version is okay, but Anyway, mixed feelings about that one. But it's on Blu-ray. It looks good. Here we go. This is killer. Bound for Glory. Can you believe? I mean, Twilight Time. This is like killer for them to get Bound for Glory. Fantastic Hal Ashby film. That is the story of Woody Guthrie, the biopic about Woody Guthrie, one of the best films of the 1970s. This is from 1976. Only 3,000 units, get it fast. And our very good friend Melinda Dillon has a dual role in this film.
Why don't you explain to everybody why 1976 was the greatest year for Oscar Best Picture nominees?
Because Rocky won, and everybody was like, what? It was. It's a film that shouldn't have won. But Rocky won because it was the zeitgeist film. It was the thing that just sort of got everybody's heart.
But it was Rocky. It was All the President's Men.
Yes.
Network.
Taxi
Driver.
And Bound for Glory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, you kidding me?
That's it's like the holy quadrinity.
It really is.
Quintinity.
And because it was 1976, the bicentennial.
Yeah.
And Rocky had a lot of big bicentennial themes woven in there.
Those are 5 incredibly heavy hitter movies.
Isn't that crazy?
What do you think about the PGA picking The Big Short?
It's going to really increase its Best Picture chances now.
You know what that says to me? That doesn't say to me that The Best Short is an odds-on favorite for Best Picture. What that says to me is The Revenant has no support for Best Picture. What that says to me is The Revenant is completely... I mean, I've been saying Spotlight's going to take it easily. I still say Spotlight will take it. But what that says is that there's really much less support for The Revenant than I think everybody thinks.
You know what? It's all about Leo. It's all about Leo and whatever technical awards it happens to get.
It's going to get Leo, nothing else. It's not going to get anything else. It's not going to get anything else. It's not. Everything else will go to Mad Max. Trust me. Anyway, isolated score and trailer on Bound for Glory as well. But
by the way, who shot this film?
Making me sad.
Aww.
Haskell Wexler,
who passed away a couple weeks ago.
And then, like, literally days afterwards, Vilmos Zsigmond went. Like, the two guys who literally recreated the 70s for us. Along with, Gordon Willis. But Gordon Willis is still with us, knock on wood. Anyway, Leonard Rosenman wrote a great score, and David Carradine, best thing he's ever done on film. Best thing he's ever done, playing Woody Guthrie. Really, really good. Speaking of great films from the 70s, Jack Nicholson in The Last Detail, another Hal Ashby film. This is from 1973, and Hal Ashby, just a superb director, and this is why. He made just so many really, really good films. Former editor, known around town as the guy that just with his big old beard and his long gray hair and flip-flops and linen pants.
Hal Ashby owned the 70s, because in the 80s he did like nothing, and in the 60s he did barely nothing. He was the 70s.
He was the 70s, but you looked at him and you're like, that dude just looks like the 70s. He just looks like a dirty old hippie hanging out on the side of the road just asking you for a spleef. doesn't he? He looks like that guy.
Wait, saying the word spleef.
I know. I thought it'd be funny. Anyway, Jack Nicholson, Randy Quaid, Carol Kane. Really a great cast here. Otis Young, really, really great. So it's wonderful. Jack Nicholson as a sailor, and it's such a good movie. Okay, real quickly wrapping these out so we can get around to some other stuff. The happy ending. Unusual release from Twilight Time. This is a 1969 film from Richard Brooks, another great director of the era, 1960s primarily. Also shot by an amazing cinematographer, Conrad Hall, and an amazing score by Michel Legrand, the great French composer of things like Yentl and the Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And it's wonderful. The isolated score track alone is worth getting this because you can't find this score anywhere. It's just Michel Legrand music that you've got to hear to believe it. Shirley Jones, John Forsythe, Gene Simmons, all just fantastic in what's basically a melodrama about a busted up marriage. But it's a really, really interesting movie. Hawaii, based on the James Michener book when he was writing about giant geographical places. Great score by Elmer Bernstein that is also isolated here. This is from the Mirish Company with a screenplay by Dalton Trumbo and great direction by George Roy Hill. Basically, it's straightforward kind of colonial era epic with Julie Andrews and Max von Sydow and Richard Harris in Hawaii during the kind of colonial early period of Hawaii, the 19th century, and all the conflicts that go on trying to sort of civilize those barbaric Polynesian people and their hula hoops and all that stuff that they invented. Because they invented the hula hoop, right?
They also invented the pineapple. The pineapple.
They invented it, right?
They did.
That's their invention.
They cross a pine cone with an apple.
All right. Another kind of an unusual Twilight Time pickup here is Harlock, Space Pirate 3D, which is an animated film from the Harlock world, if you're familiar with any of the anime. This is the original Japanese version on one disc and an international cut on another disc, both of them in 2D and 3D. Not going to be for all Twilight Time fans, but it's actually, this is kind of a cult title. So anybody who's into the whole Harlock thing, you'll totally dig it. And then lastly, From the Terrace, really another kind of forgotten classic directed by Mark Robson, another one of those great big movie studio guys from the 60s, with a very old Myrna Loy showing up in here as well. Not too old, but basically this is a Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward movie. And you're watching the real life couple just do their thing, and it is really, really great drama based on the John O'Hara novel. And it's good. Paul Newman's great. Joanne Woodward's great. Mark Robson's direction is great. Classic 1960s filmmaking. So all those on Blu-ray. Thank you, Twilight Time. Beautiful. Mark, what we got?
We have the big release of the week. We have The Martian with Matt Damon. This thing is up for 800 Academy Awards.
And just a quick note. One of the things that they're talking about changing with the Oscars, which they should change, was when they went to 10 nominees. It was no longer just about how many votes nominated you. It was about, you had to rank 1 through 10. So everybody had to write down 10 movies and rank their favorite and then their second favorite, which starts to get pretty arbitrary. Because you and I both know that if you ask me on Tuesday what my 10 favorite films are, they're going to change on Wednesday. And you had to get, and they changed it so you had to get 350 or first place votes in order to get a Best Picture nominee. So nomination. So even if you had like 3,000 number 2 votes, if you didn't get 350 number 1 votes, you missed that nomination. Now, what do you want to bet that if you totaled up the points the way that we do in LAFCA, that Straight Outta Compton would have been easily one of the top 5, 6, 7 movies. Easily. If you just total up all the points. But it didn't get 350 first place points, so it didn't wind up there. So why did they do that? So that movies like The Martian would get in there, so they get blockbusters in there. That's what they did that for.
What's funny is that when the Academy first extended it, they wanted to get The Dark Knight at the time, these blockbusters in there. But then for the last 10 years or so, it wound up just adding more slots for smaller films.
Yeah, like Birdman.
Yeah. So here, I guess it paid off in the sense that The Martian got in. And does The Martian deserve to be nominated for Best Picture? Well, not really, but it's a very solid mainstream piece of entertainment that I think people really latched on to because it showed the power of American can-do scientific ingenuity. And it's nice to see a movie where a character actually kind of articulates what he's doing in order to get out of this difficult situation, and that there's a lot of actual science involved. It made people feel smart. It made people feel it wasn't just another dumb blockbuster. So it's a good film. It's a good film. It's exciting. Ridley Scott, I don't know that Ridley Scott had to direct this film. It could have been directed by any number of people. I'd like to see Ridley Scott, I'd rather have him go back to doing some kick-ass alien films or something a little bit more visually distinctive. But still, Martian's a solid film, and Matt Damon is terrific in it. He holds the film together. I don't blame the actors for saying, hey, look, here's one guy who's in this film for 2.5 hours, and you care. You know what it is? It's almost like, a performance is 90% casting anyway.
Yeah.
And when you cast Matt Damon, he's such an everyman. He's so charming. You
It
always
gets
root for
silly
him.
at the end, though. It does.
Well, the thing is that the issue is that all of that goodwill that it had accumulated with the audience for all that scientific accuracy, they throw that out like in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So that was a little disappointing. But by and large,
didn't it start to feel a little bit like Dark Star at the end?
Anyway, it's got a bunch of okay special features on it. Yeah. So The Martian, I would definitely check that out. Also looks gorgeous. Looks
It's a
gorgeous.
good-looking film. It's
Looks
good-looking.
gorgeous. Woody Allen's latest, Irrational Man. This is Woody Allen, very flatly shot. It's kind of boring. Wasn't really my favorite. This is like Woody Allen. You know what it is? When you do a movie a year, some are going to be good, some are not going to be good. This is one of those ones that just feels a little bit cranked out.
Don't you feel, though, when you look at Woody's later stage stuff, I would say everything from kind of Bullets on Broadway to the present day, where he's begun casting surrogates for himself, right? Where you get Larry David basically as a surrogate,
Jason Biggs,
or Jason
God,
Biggs, right? Or where all the movies where he's had surrogates for himself. And John Cusack was a really good one in Bullets over Broadway, but and he's even had Owen Wilson has been his surrogate. He's had Josh Brolin as his surrogate. The two that I think don't really work are Sean Penn and Joaquin Phoenix. They're the two that don't really pull off the Woody persona. The others are they're all a little bit kind of nerdy and neurotic enough that they can sort of kind of weave themselves into the characters that he writes clearly for himself or based on himself. But
he would surely deny that.
Well, he would deny that, of course. But they're all sort of facsimiles of his persona. But the two that don't pull it off are Joaquin Phoenix and Sean Penn.
Well, Sean Penn has there's nothing vulnerable or soft about Sean Penn. He's got to really try.
Although El Chapo might disagree with you.
You know what? Why are you not eating the ice cream I made? Why are you not eating the ice cream?
Never mind. I'll eat the ice cream.
Now,
Shut up.
unlike other Woody Allen Blu-ray releases, this one has 3 Woody Allen commentaries and 3 discs worth of extras. Oh, it doesn't have that? Actually, this one has
This is a really good ice cream.
Thank you. Hey, now, did you think it would be chocolate ice cream with like raspberries, just like big plump raspberries in it? That's not what it is. I pureed the raspberries.
Oh, listen to you.
I pureed the raspberries. I strained the seeds out, and then
Oh
I
my
just dumped it into the chocolate.
Very nice.
Thank you. Just saying. Anyway, Emma Stone is in this, and she, of course, is delightful. I have to say that I felt that Woody's previous film, the one with the King's Speech guy, I like that one a lot.
The King's... Colin Firth.
Yes, I like the one Colin Firth.
Yeah.
And
No, that's
Emma Stone. That one I thought was delightful. And I know that one kind of got overlooked. This one I think deserves to be overlooked. But it does have Parker Posey. That's a good thing. We like Parker Posey.
Yeah.
Anyway, now let's talk about one of Hollywood's most legendary bombs. Gem and the Holograms.
Oh my gosh, this thing just...
Gem and the Holograms... Gem and the Holograms is based on a cartoon that nobody remembers, or a show, whatever the hell it was, that nobody remembers. And somehow, this thing was just destined to fail. And not only did it fail, it failed spectacularly. This thing opened up on 2,500 theaters and made $1.3 million. That was a per-screen... That was a Hollywood historical worst. Per-screen average of $570 per screen.
Was it worse than the Oogie Loves movie? I thought that was the worst.
Supposedly,
I think the Oogie Loves movie opened on like 3,000 screens and made negative $20 because somehow they had to pay somebody back for their
There was a weird reason why they wound up
choking
in
on a
theaters.
kernel of popcorn.
That's what it was. There was something going on there. But it was funny because I was reading about it when it came out, and Universal, the studio that released it, stopped reporting the numbers after just 2 weeks. What's the point? You know,
because you're paying more to the people who are reporting it.
You're paying the money you spend to salary the people who are paid to report the movie are making more than the movie's making.
That's hysterical.
So this thing is just obviously
really good. Thank you. That's enough sugar for me to keep going for the week.
You know, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
That like all great recipes, it has only 4 ingredients. Very few ingredients. It has cream, raspberries, sugar, and Dutch chocolate. And why are you laughing?
I'm
like
laughing.
You're laughing.
I'm laughing because the whole subject of ice cream. I was listening to Patton Oswalt on Friday when I was driving into the radio, and you just reminded me of the George Lucas with a shovel segment where he says, "You like ice cream? I love ice cream. Well, here's a bag of rock salt." So anytime I hear you start talking about ingredients for ice cream, I think about rock salt, and that makes me think about Patton Oswalt, and then I laugh.
It's a great story, Wade.
Yeah. Okay.
Sinister 2 is the sequel to Sinister, and this thing is terrible. I mean, what do you want me to say?
I'm always amazed. I'm always amazed at the stuff that actually not just gets made but gets sequelized. Like Sinister, really? Did the first Sinister do so well they needed to have a Sinister 2? Or are they just being lazy?
Look, they would rather do Sinister 2 and hope for the best than do something original.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. If it has a 2 on it, people think, oh my God, if the first one was... I must have missed the boat on the first one if there's a sequel.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Wow. Anyway, it's got a couple good scares, but I just think both these movies I think are just really stupid. So that's Sinister 2. The Paranormal Activity, that series actually wasn't bad, but I got to tell you, man, this thing jumped the shark with the Ghost Dimension, which is available on the Blu-ray 3D, Blu-ray, and DVD. The thing is well into its lifespan as a franchise. I hope it dies. There's lapses in logic, and the found footage thing is just, I'm totally over it. And the jump scares are predictable, and, I just think this thing needs to go off and die. So hopefully Paranormal Activity will die forever with this particular sequel, which is really bad.
Right. Cool.
Speaking of really bad, Painkillers. Painkillers is about a bunch of Marines sent on this classified mission in Afghanistan, and it's a total programmer, and it's this thing looks low budge all the way. The cast is nothing to write home about. A bunch of people you never heard of, except Colm Feore. He does a bunch of drama stuff on Fox and whatnot, but it's got a couple of exciting moments, but still, I just think this is completely generic. There's Contracted Phase 2. Now, I wasn't really sure what Contracted Phase 1 was, but based on Contracted Phase 2, I'll pass. Anyway, the sequel is based on this guy played by Matt Mercer. He tries to find more about this virus that he was infected with. So it's a little better than low budget looking, but it's still pretty low budget looking. And it's just the finale is just really just a bunch of blood thrown around the screen. It's just ridiculous. It's what it is. It's like a virus movie combined with a little bit of a monster movie. And so I just think that the filmmakers really took on more than they can chew on this one because it just needed somebody with a much more professional hand. And then equally bad is you have the Diabolical. Now the Diabolical stars Ali Larter, who.
She was the commercial, that famous commercial where she flips around and does the whole what was that, a beer commercial, chip commercial. That was that Lay's commercial.
But she does stuff.
Yeah.
She plays this mother of 2 living in the suburban home, and then all these crazy things happen, and she's got to figure out what is it that's so frightening. Of course, it's she brings on these paranormal experts. So basically, it's the same as Paranormal Activity, Poltergeist, anything where a woman is living in a home, strange things happen, they bring in the experts, and spooky things happen. It's just like the other one. It's totally generic. And once you find out what exactly the situation is, you'll be like, okay, that wasn't worth waiting for. So that's Diabolical.
Yeah.
And then you have another movie called The Looking Glass. This one is not a horror film. Why do we even talk about this?
I don't know.
Anyway, The Looking Glass, it was it's directed by John Hancock, which is kind of interesting because John Hancock, who's done nothing forever, he directed the guy's Oscar nominated. He directed Bang the Drum Slowly with Robert De Niro. So you gotta love that. So anyway, it's about this 13-year-old girl, this newcomer named Grace Tarnov, who's actually pretty good. She goes to live with her grandmother, who used to be an actress, and so she doesn't get along with the grandmother, and so she sort of starts to drift around and kind of try to find herself and find her voice and her passion with the help of her grandmother, just in terms of like, because her grandmother was an actress who obviously finds different voices by virtue of the fact that she gets cast in all these roles, and so this girl who's kind of a little rudderless kind of uses that as a jumping off point to find herself. So you know what, this really isn't really bad. Looking Glass is kind of nice. It's put out by First Run Features, and so if you've literally watched every single solitary thing on Netflix, and there's nothing else to watch 5 other things.
Sweet.
Then watch this.
All right. Okay.
What else we got?
Well, we got some good stuff now from Criterion and Olive and Synapse. 3 from Synapse that I want to make a quick mention of here. Synapse, usually does kind of culty stuff. The memorable, sort of it's fan stuff, right? I mean, they release movies that have a really strong cult following. This is the weirdest thing that Synapse has ever released, and that is saying something, because Synapse has released some really fringy, weird stuff. Mark, you ever heard of Thundercrack?
That's what they call my.
Don't joke, because literally that's whatever you are thinking of, whatever your joke is, that's what the movie is. Thundercrack is a cult film from 1975. It's 2.5 hours long, and it's kind of insane. This is a pornographic horror film, which is the only way I can describe it, but it's really just completely off the wall. 1975 is pretty late for something like this to be made, because it feels more like a film that would have been made in about 1965 or 66 or 67, when the heyday of, roughy films and really, really fringy horror films were being made. Anyway, basically, it's a completely weird, off-the-wall, just totally psychedelic, kind of hardcore-ish horror film set in a spooky house on a hill. And there's no other way to describe it. It's just totally off the wall. It's weird. It's far out. It's over 2.5 hours long, and it's nuts. Anyway, there is a feature-length documentary on here that is way better than the film itself. I can't remember the film. I can't recommend the film at all, but I can recommend It Came from Kushar, which was made in 2009, which is a merciful hour and a half. And this is a documentary about the twin brothers, George and Mike Kushar, who were basically responsible for this thing, right? George Kushar was the one mainly involved with this film, but George and Mike Kushar, twin brothers, and this is all about them. And you got a lot of fascinating interviews here with people, including Adam McGoyan and Buck Henry and Wayne Wang and John Waters and Guy Madden. I mean, people who were really influenced by them in a very strange and weird way. This was completely off of my radar. I had never heard of this film till it showed up. So there it is. That is Thundercrack from Synapse, and this whole new line of Synapse comes in black Blu-ray keep cases, which is kind of stark. I've never seen these before, but they're interesting. Another one from Synapse is the 2003 International Emmy nominee for Best Documentary, the original 2003 uncut miniseries of Stalingrad, and not exactly a point in history that you want to spend a lot of time with. The siege of Stalingrad, Russia and Germany in 1943 is just so depressing and so stark and so brutal. It is an important part of history to know about, but it is really unbelievably unpleasant to watch. It's pretty depressing. It's one of the darkest episodes of World War II, and we don't talk about it a lot in the United States because obviously we weren't involved. But it is really quite hard hitting and definitely worth watching. It certainly gives you what went on from both sides, the German side and the Russian side. It really balances both perspectives and both sets of experiences in a very, very professional way. So there's that, and then there's some supporting documentaries as well. And then, as long as we're talking about depressing World War II era stuff, here you go. This is The Big Mama. Not exactly a film that is pleasant to watch. It is disturbing and frustrating, and yet if you can detach yourself in any way emotionally, it is an important film to watch because it is one of the most important films ever made independent of the ideology behind it, independent of what it represents historically, in many respects also because of what it represents historically. And we are talking about Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will Special Edition, which has never been out on Blu-ray before, but it is now. And Triumph of the Will, of course, is Leni Riefenstahl's masterful propaganda film that boosted the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler by capturing the 1934 Nazi Party rally in Nuremberg. And it is an incredible piece of craftsmanship, and yet knowing what we know, it's hard to watch the film without just bristling and really being upset at the manipulation. And of course, those who've listened to the podcast long enough know that my mother was of course German and a refugee around right at the end of World War II. So it's hard for me to watch this without sort of thinking of all of our family history and all the ugliness that entailed from that period. So I guardedly recommend Triumph of the Will for those who are able to sort of put their emotions in a certain place and watch this with some kind of, I guess, antiseptic objectivity, if that's even possible.
This movie obviously is historically vital. I hate to say it, but it reminds me, there's a parallel here between Triumph of the Will and like Birth of a Nation, where even though what it has to say might be abhorrent, historically it needs to be out there. It can't be buried. It can't be ignored. Every time in Los Angeles, whenever there's a revival screening of Birth of a Nation, all these African American people always, they boycott the theater and they say, "How dare you? It's racist." And yes, it's racist. It is. I mean, it's a horrible film.
But you can't ignore it.
I mean, I own Birth of a Nation Blu-rays. Sue me. I mean, I'm saying it's a historically important film, despite what it has to say. And Triumph of the Will is the same way.
And Birth of a Nation, by the way, was the film that when I taught film history, that was the first film that I asked people to watch because I wanted them to see something. People tend to take film history classes thinking, cool, I'll get to watch free movies. And I wanted to make sure that, the people that took the class started with something that frustrated and disturbed them and bothered them. And, that's because that's what movies do sometimes. And especially as critics, you have to deal with that. Olive, we got an amazing bunch of cool stuff from Olive Films. Olive has really hit it out of the park this month. Let me tell you what we got. We start off with The Undesirable, a practically lost 1914 film by Michael Curtiz, the future director of Casablanca, made when he was in Hungary before he came to Hollywood, when his name was still Mikhail Horthy or whatever, however you would pronounce it in the original Hungarian. Before he kind of, anglicized it. Really an incredible silent film. The elements look like they were pretty shot, so it's about an hour long, and the Blu-ray gives you the best condition of this stuff that I think is probably possible. But consider, you can see the emergence of a really incredible craftsman here. Somebody who was probably not really as acknowledged during the silent era as he could have been, but again went on in the sound era to become much bigger than any other silent era director who transitioned to sound. So, fantastic score here, by the way, from the Pannonia Symphony Orchestra, which I've never heard of, but lovely, lovely job there. And it's a really, really, really cool silent film called The Undesirable. You got to check that out. Here's a film that I saw at the Cannes Film Festival in 1992, which is Gary Sinise's Of Mice and Men. He directed this and he acts in it along with John Malkovich.
I like this a lot.
I do too.
It's terrific.
I do too. I really do. I think this is in many respects the definitive telling of Mice and Men. It really feels much more Steinbecky than certainly than the old black and white version. But I thought this was really good, and part of it is that they hired Horton Foote to write the screenplay, and I thought that's really smart.
Yeah,
it's
a wonderful match of a screenwriter and material.
It's perfect, and just John Malkovich as Lenny is just perfect, absolutely perfect. Could not be better. And Sherilyn Fenn, coming right off of Twin Peaks, made a wonderful transition, and she's just fantastic in this. I mean, it's perfect casting. And I remember really, really well the press conference. This was in competition at Cannes in 1992, and that was my first year there, and I was just so kind of blown away. I thought, wow, that's a really beautiful movie, and I had no idea that Gary Sinise directed. Then we also have Let There Be Light, John Huston's wartime documentaries. For those who don't know, almost everybody who was anybody in Hollywood during World War II went and made documentaries. Frank Capra obviously made the Why We Fight series. He didn't actually go to combat. John Ford went and put himself right in the middle of combat and got some amazing color footage from Guadalcanal and places. William Wyler, Memphis Belle. I mean, everybody was involved in doing stuff for the war effort. And John Huston, just like the rest of them. So you get a whole bunch of really, really great documentaries here. There are all kinds of lengths. Most of them are kind of, between 20 minutes and an hour. But it's really, really, really good stuff. And you even have like Report from the Aleutians, which was in the Pacific Theater, obviously up when, a lot of people don't realize Japan was given us hell up by Alaska. That was actually nominated for Best Documentary Short at the Academy Awards. And San Pietro is the really famous one, which was added to the National Film Registry, as was Let There Be Light, which is a much more controversial and longer film. But you get bonus features, which includes raw camera footage from San Pietro and an hour of Shades of Grey. It's just really, really great stuff. Really great stuff. John Huston just, completely unleashed that warrior in himself and gave us some amazing footage from World War II. And then the last four here, this is one that's a little bit more off the beaten path. Olive picks up a lot of stuff from Japan as well. This is a film called Hanadama, The Origin. And I was not familiar with the director of the film by the name of Sato Hisayasa, who previously made a film called Splatter, Naked Blood, which tells you a lot. He's one of a group of directors that I'm not familiar with, but who were known as the Four Devils, who worked on Pink films in the 1980s. Now, I've seen a lot of the Pink film stuff. Andy Klein and I did some commentary for a lot of the Pink films, but there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these movies. So it's a domain that I'm not that familiar with. But it is weird and fringy and very, very culty, and this one in particular, the whole thing. It's a lot of these cult films in Japan take place in high school and center on students because there's a weird fetishistic thing going on. Anyway, this deals with a girl who grows a flower from her head, and that enables her to wreak vengeance on those who have tormented her.
True story?
It actually, as a matter of fact, it is.
Wow.
Anyway, it's a very, very strange and weird film, but if you like these weird, fringy, culty, fetishy Japanese films, man, it's going to be just perfect for you. Life Tracker is an interesting little kind of low-budget sci-fi thing from 2013. An Olive pickup of a film that obviously didn't get a substantial theatrical release, but this includes DVD and Blu-ray, not just the Blu-ray, but a DVD and a Blu-ray, and it's one of these newfangled low-budget sci-fi films that deals with a rather tantalizing what if, and it's nice. It's nice that they aren't. That they're not dealing with, time travel, which is getting really, really, like Synchronicity, one that I saw this last week that we didn't actually get to on the radio. It's like, oh, another time travel movie? Please stop it. I've seen these paradoxes enough. The idea here is that if DNA could predict your future, if you could figure out everything you need to know about your future through your DNA. Quite interesting. Directed by Joe McLean, who previously made How to Make a David Lynch film, and it's actually quite interesting. It sort of gets into it deals with metaphysical and existential concepts about our accumulation of information and how we process it, and I thought it was pretty smart. Serial is another weird, culty film that just completely fell off of a lot of people's radar. This is from 1980. Feels very much like a 1970s film. It's got that culty thing that a lot like a Kentucky Fried Movie kind of had. It sort of feels like, let's throw a bunch of people together and just do something totally wild with not very much money. Martin Mull stars, along with Tuesday Weld and Christopher Lee and Sally Kellerman. And it's based apparently on a novel called Serial, A Year in the Life of Marin County. But it's basically just a satire of hippie lifestyle from the 1970s, which is probably why it feels like the 1970s. And then lastly, a really lovely Blu-ray of Christmas Eve. Olive did a great job with this. This is I wouldn't call this the most Christmassy film in the world, but it's really one that I'll have to ask Alonzo about this. This really deserves to kind of be in there with the unsung Christmas films of yesteryear. This is from 1947. It stars George Raft, Randolph Scott, Joan Blondell. Great 1940s era kind of noir cast. And it's essentially about it's sort of a noir that turns into a melodramatic, heartwarming holiday comedy. And, I thought it was good. George Raft, seeing him in something in which he's not, shooting somebody or conspiring to kill somebody in some diabolical way. It's nice.
You know what else is nice, Wade?
What's nice?
Criterion. Oh. Now, some of these are already on shelves. Some of these are a little bit newer, but we're catching up on stuff. And Wade was nice enough to wait until I was back to talk about Speedy, starring my all-time favorite Harold Lloyd.
I knew it.
And this Speedy is wonderful. It's Harold Lloyd's last silent film, and it's just great. And what's great about it is that Harold, he shot a lot of his stuff in Los Angeles, but he really felt that no studio in Hollywood could replicate Manhattan. So he actually decided to film Speedy partially in New York City. And it's great. He shoots in the Village and in Central Park and at Yankee Stadium, where you can see the film also features Babe Ruth, which is fantastic. So that's a nice little snapshot of New York during the 1920s. This film is great. It's a lot of fun. It's about this character. It's, Speedy was actually Harold Lloyd's nickname, which was given to him by his father. Speedy is this baseball crazy guy who can't hold a job. He tries to be a cab driver. He tries to be like a soda jerk. And then in the end, he finds his calling, which is to try to save New York's last horse-drawn streetcar. And that's where it all comes from. And this is a wonderful film. And I actually have a Harold Lloyd box set. So I've kind of neglected to, although I do have Safety Last on Blu-ray, I've neglected to buy a lot of the Harold Lloyd stuff on Blu-ray because I do have this wonderful DVD box set. But I'm going to have to pick up Speedy because Wade won't give this to me.
Oh, Speedy.
Yeah, I can give it to me, all right.
Mm-mm. Damn you. Love Speedy. It's a beautiful movie. It really is.
It's great.
It's so little seen, It's one of those, I think partly because...
1928, by the way.
I think partly it's because Harold Lloyd is, and to some degree, Chaplin and Keaton have a whole catalog of films that everybody pays attention to. You can sort of name off all the great Chaplin films. You can name off all the great Keaton films one after another. Oh, Sherlock Jr., The General, on and on and on and on. But where Lloyd is concerned, it's sort of like Safety Last and
Safety Last.
And Safety Last, right?
Because Safety Last has the image of him hanging from the clock, and that's like the iconic image.
And that's the one, and everyone kind of starts and stops there,
it's really sad because he was wonderful.
They miss a lot of the other stuff
because he had just like Chaplin had, the kid.
Yeah.
Lloyd had his character, the glasses character.
Yeah.
And he'd wear the round glasses, and that was his thing.
Yeah.
And it was great. I thought he was just wonderful.
By the way, the other thing to point out about Harold Lloyd, even though he was considered the number 3 guy of all of them, he was by far the one that was smartest with his money. Because Buster Keaton wound up not owning anything and was almost destitute at a certain point in his life. And Chaplin did fine, but had so many problems with women and children and wives and marriages and then taxes and the government, and wound up just becoming a recluse in Switzerland, just saying to hell with the whole thing and throwing it all away. And Harold Lloyd was really very smart, never had any problems, didn't have any family problems, no illegitimate children problems or, statutory rape or taxes, none of that. And he wound up owning, like 2/3 of Los Angeles.
It was great.
I mean, there's so much land in Los Angeles where like, oh, yeah, that was part of, Harold Lloyd owned that. He owned that. I mean, it was amazing. He was smart.
He was also a guy who blew his fingers off. Did you know that?
No.
Harold Lloyd. If you look at Harold Lloyd films, you got to look very carefully because they're obviously 80 years old and black and white and whatever. In this accident, Harold Lloyd lost his thumb and the index finger of his right hand.
You're kidding.
And so he did a lot of those stunts and things that he did without use of
with 3 fingers.
Without 2 fingers of his right hand.
Holy cow!
In fact, in certain films, you can see where like he would wear they would give he'd have like a prosthetic, or he'd wear a glove that had 5 fingers, so you couldn't really tell he didn't have all 5 fingers of his right hand.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
It's awesome that he lost 2 of his. It's so awesome. Speaking of awesome, we have also from Criterion, Burroughs by Howard Brookner. This is a very important historical document from 1983. This is, it was filmed over the course of 5 years, and it's all about William S. Burroughs. And William S. Burroughs, if you don't know, he was a major American novelist and satirist and spoken word performer, and all around really strange person. He, his primary work was, Naked Lunch, which gives you a sense of, how weird he was, which Cronenberg made a film out of about 20 years ago.
Yeah,
more at this point.
Peter Weller.
With Peter Weller. So this is a great, especially now that, Burroughs is gone. He died, I think, in mid-90s, 96, 97, something like that. But now that he's been gone for, let's say, almost 20 years, which is so sad, this is a great behind-the-scenes look at how he thought, what he said. There's also, the director, Bruckner, also got help from some more contemporary filmmakers, including Jim Jarmusch, and lots of interviews with folks you might remember, like Allen Ginsberg, Terry Southern. So this is just great stuff. It's historically important. It's highly entertaining. It gives you an inside look into a very important American writer. And so I would highly recommend Burroughs. And, of course, as usual, Criterion comes up with all sorts of great extras, including an audio commentary with Jim Jarmusch. Looks great. Audio interview with the director, Howard Bruckner from 1985. So, definitely good stuff from Burroughs. The film Wade has in his hand, I was not really a huge fan of, although I don't know.
Well, it never
maybe
got
you
released.
like it.
I
didn't like it.
It's Jellyfish Eyes. This is from 2013. This is a very unusual pickup for Criterion through Janus Films. I don't know what the lineage of this film is, but man, this is one of these weird, freaky Japanese movies. Very unusual. The directing debut of Takashi Murakami, who is a very famous artist, and it's boy, I don't even know how to describe this. If you're an animation fan, if you're if you're a fan of just weird Japanese art, I guess there's a lot of latitude here. But essentially, this is the story of a little boy who has this weird creature for a friend that he discovers is basically all the other children have these creaturey things for friends, and it becomes kind of like a I can't say it's like E.T. It's not really in any way like E.T. or even like Lilo and Stitch. It
feels very culturally specific and insular. Where I was watching it, going, was this created on Pluto?
Yeah, it feels like there's a whole class of films in Japan, and they constitute anime and CG animated and even live action, where it feels like what they're basically about is this sense of insecurity, homogeneity, and alienation that the Japanese people feel relative to their culture, to just being on an island, to not having borders with other countries, to not really, to being sort of not quite reconciled to their past, but not yet certain of their future, and the only country that ever suffered, nuclear annihilation, and now, with this nuclear catastrophe at Fukushima, it just feels like there's so much in Japan that just feeds their anxiety and their insecurity as a people. And this just feels like another one of those movies that taps into that. So it's very, very hard to describe, but it's admirable on many levels. But it's definitely an unusual film. Anyway, special features. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, including Takashi Murakami, The Art of Film, which is all about the making of this film in particular. And it's worth checking out. But I would almost say, if you have Hulu Plus, you might want to take a look at it there first, just to make sure.
Wade, I'm a big fan of Patricia Highsmith, even though she was a horrible anti-Semite. But you know what? It just goes to show that
that's one reason I think Carol was not nominated for Best Picture. To be honest,
really,
I have a theory.
Wow.
Because look, talented Mr. Ripley, 5 Oscar nominations, but not for Best Director or Picture.
But there's enough. Here's the thing, though. There's enough. If there's enough support for it to get 5 Oscar nominations, which is no small potatoes.
Because there is let's be honest, there's a higher concentration of old Jewish men in the director's branch and among the producers.
Really? I resemble that remark.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of old Jewish men among the costumers, but there definitely are in the director's branch. And Highsmith is, especially since that bio was published some years ago, where people are like, really? She was going to leave her fortune to the Intifada because she hated Israel so much? Yeah, well, here's what I think of you, lady, and that's where it comes.
Oh, my God. Well, I do love her books, and I've read a number of them.
Look, great. No, I don't have to like her to like her books. She's a
true.
great writer. She's a great writer.
And Criterion has gifted us with The American Friend, which is a great adaptation of Ripley's Game, which is one of the Ripley novels, which the talented Mr. Ripley was made into a film, with Matt Damon and whatnot. And this is just really good stuff. I like this film a lot. This is Dennis Hopper's in this. He's the cynical hero, and he's got to find somebody to kill. I'm trying to be as vague as I can because I just think this thing is just wonderful. And he's this American art dealer, and he winds up getting involved with this dying German man who's played by Bruno Ganz, who was so amazing as Hitler in Downfall. So I cannot recommend enough The American Friend. I think it's just terrific. It was made in 1977, so it has, it's Wim Wenders, but yet it still has that a little bit of that like weird paranoid thing going on, which was so apropos for the 70s. You saw a lot of American films, but still, I just think this film was great. And of course, Criterion knocked out of the park with a new 4K digital restoration and a audio commentary from 2002 featuring Wim Wenders and Dennis Hopper, which is a total must listen to, and a new interview with Wenders, which is also good. He remembers a lot about the making of the film. So I would very highly recommend The American Friend, even though you're like, The American Friend? I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, one more Criterion and then a few...
we have another Criterion.
Oh, we do, don't we? Yeah.
Did you want to talk about this?
Yeah, well, I either or. I love those films.
Well, let's talk about The Complete Lady Snowblood. Now, if you've seen Kill Bill,
this is all over it. This is one of the. I mean, the Lady Snowblood films are all over Kill Bill.
Pretty much, Tarantino was a huge fan, and these films were a huge influence on him, and he wound up basically making Kill Bill as a
the Kill Bill Part 1 is mostly influenced by Seijun Suzuki movies. A few Kinji Fukasaku Yakuza movies, and the Lady Snowblood films.
Now, this one is about this woman, Yuki, she's an assassin trained from birth. She's got to find the men who killed her, murdered her father, and raped her mother before she was born. And it really is. There's just blood everywhere, man. The blood is just spraying onto the screen. It's really fantastic.
It's fantastic.
So if you like this kind of film, you will just completely and totally love all the sword play, great choreography on the sword play. The actress who plays Lady Snowblood is just awesome. You can see, like, in this thing's from like the early 70s. You can see, like, boys coming of age at that time, seeing this
totally
beautiful, demure, Japanese woman just kicking ass with a sword and
it's fantastic.
It was really great.
How do you not love a name like Lady Snowblood? It conjures such a great sensibility.
Well, this is a great film. Anyway, Lady Snowblood.
Lady Snowblood, the complete Lady Snowblood. And from 1949, a really interesting Italian neorealist film with some great credentials and a really lovely movie as well. If you've never heard of it, it tends to get overshadowed by a lot of the other great neorealist films. But this is Bitter Rice by the director Giuseppe De Santis. Not really a well-known director here, but you know the producer. You know the film's producer, Dino De Laurentiis. Dino, who received a number of Academy Award nominations for producing some really great early Italian films, and then went on to produce an awful lot of really bad Hollywood movies. But in any case, Bitter Rice is one of the better performances from Vittorio Gassman. Vittorio Gassman, a great Italian actor who did a lot of work in Hollywood as well. This is basically kind of a rural crime film in a lot of respects. It's a little bit noirish, but very, very neo-realistic. It's essentially looking at what the life was like in post-war Italy for rural field workers and what they would have to resort to, and what their how they were able to sort of survive in this horrible environment. And it's interesting. It's an interesting contrast to something like The Bicycle Thieves, which is about living in the cities, in the burned out, bombed out ruins of cities where there's sort of no law and order in the urban environment. This sort of goes out into the countryside and wrestles with a lot of the same concepts. But a great performance by Vittorio Gassman, really, really good performance by Doris Dowling as well, an American actress who shows up in this thing. And you get a 2008 documentary on the director Giuseppe De Santis for those who really aren't familiar with his work. But It's a very, very nice Blu-ray, an unexpected Blu-ray from Criterion, and for fans of neorealism, definitely a nice entry into that catalog. And with that, Mark, we are done. We'll be back next week with more fun and frolic.
Wait, you mean I'll be back next week?
Yes.
Thanks, Wade.